He ono ni me te kororia ki te atua maunga rungu ki te whenua e whakaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa. Te mihi ka koutou. Honour the Father above, the land below, and all the people here present today. Particularly like to acknowledge our what we call our kaikarakia o te wānei, the person who brought us together with a prayer, Monique Monash. Yeah, thank you very much. And also the previous speakers. I know that somewhere along the line, a long time ago, our ancestors were the same people. So we always say here that there's a certain amount of wehi of excitement that comes when people from different backgrounds meet, because their ancestors get excited because of those long ago, those associations that they had. Yeah, greetings to everyone. And also, I'm aware, obviously it's virtual, but this is hosted in Canada. And so greetings acknowledged to those whenua, those lands in Mi'kmaq, and also Innu and elsewhere, Algonquin, which is the only place which I have visited actually. When I was a young fella, someone chucked me on a canoe for 3 days and sent me to the Algonquin National Park. So that's all I claim to know of it, but it was a beautiful, beautiful place. So in terms of the topic today, also thanking all the people who brought us together. It's obviously difficult times to come together, even more so as Indigenous peoples. That's always been the case, and so very grateful to Sabre and the others for pulling us together in this webinar. In terms of the topic today, I suppose really given what those before me have spoken about, I'll share a little bit about what happens here in New Zealand, in Aotearoa. So yes, I am of some of our tribes here, two particular tribes, Aotearoa and Ngāti Toa, mainly based in the northern island of New Zealand, if you've been here. We are essentially looking for well-being, cultural revitalization. This is being ourselves, having the space to be ourselves, and as the others mentioned before me, to be well. Well-being is very important, and having our associations with our lands recognized and respected. And by our lands, I don't just mean whatever tiny amounts that we still possess today, because it's I'm sure it's similar in Canada, but there's virtually nothing compared to what we had to a certain degree. And so all of these places in private ownership now, or public ownership, if they're part of our lands, we expect to have our associations recognized with them. And I suppose that's where the crossover with this heritage discourse comes in terms of that heritage is an alien term. I work at an agency called Heritage New Zealand, which is the Pouhere Taonga, which is the government agency. And if you get the two names, well, it's all one name, but Heritage New Zealand is the English name. Pouhere Taonga is the Māori name. Pouhere Taonga means to bind together the taonga, the treasures that have been passed down from our ancestors, like a binding post for canoes. And so that's sort of a reflection of the divide in some ways. I won't dwell on the terminological divide, but in terms of what we are looking for here as Māori tribes of the country, well, we all have different aspirations. I can at least speak for my own, but generally they're quite shared in terms of, you might have heard about this treaty settlement business that we have in Aotearoa. So a bit like a truth and reconciliation process that's happened for the last 30 years. So for my example, one of my iwi Ngāti Toa, rangatira, they had their settlement done a few years ago. This is 20 years after the process started, more than 25. And my other iwi, Ngāti Raukawa, they still haven't had, we're still just getting in that settlement process right now. So what does that mean? That means we're looking at all of our associations with all of our lands. We're looking at all of the history of the way that the government managed to, well, either take those lands or help others take them. And so that's one particular space, dwelling on that, the historical grievances, I suppose is a word for them, but the hurt that our ancestors and peoples have. Kia ora, Frank Antoine. And in terms of that's another example, interesting example of what's going on in this country, is that my other iwi, my other tribe, which settled a few years ago, they're now able to look forward to some degree. We've got a bit of money that was given from the government, cents on a dollar, as they say, even less than 0.001% of the land was given back. But we've got something, we've got a stake we can grow and work together. So our tribes and other tribes who have had the settlement process are now looking forward. We're able to look forward. We're looking at 50-year visions, in some cases 100-year visions, because it's not about now, obviously, it's about our children and our grandchildren and our development. And really, it's just getting back up on our feet again. There's no doubt about it. Like some of the stories that were shared before me, the same here. We're at the bottom of all the statistics for everything, including imprisonment, still today. Many of us are either unwell, in poverty, or in prison. And so we're lucky that we still have elders that still, and they're the key for us, because they have hold our knowledge, and they give us something that, so that we can move forward with and grow with. And that's where the cultural revitalization comes in. And in terms of the heritage aspect of this, it is about those associations with our lands. It's about the stories that we have for those lands and all of our places within that, and our ancestors and our genealogies, and who did what where, and what is sacred and what's got other special associations. And these are all things that, with the system that is presented to us in terms of the government system here today, and I should know, I work for the government, we want to use them and abuse them and take as much as we can back of what is ours, and get, at the very least, recognition of our association with places which are no longer in our ownership. And the whole process of heritage identification from around the world, and also here with the legislation that we have, enables us in some small part to have those aspirations that we have for our lands come together. And there's lots of, I suppose, different ways that can happen. But obviously for us, it's also about drawing our own people back to their own ancestral lands, and being able to derive a livelihood on those ancestral lands. And so the economic part of the heritage discussion is key for us as well. Everything to do with those natural resources that are on the land, obviously very important to us, as they are for Indigenous peoples around the world. But figuring out a way in which we can use them wisely to grow and to derive a livelihood going forward. There is, of course, tourism, which is always, mentioned when you come into heritage sort of circles in terms of a way of making money out of your cultural inheritance on the land. And it's true, but there's also a degree of, we would like to also develop our own forms of livelihood, which aren't just necessarily show and tell for other people. And so that's kind of a little bit of a mishmash of crossover of where some of our tribes are at in this country, and a bit of a snapshot